storm chasers out there, they're seeing some strong sized hail. That's why you leave it to the professionals. Do not go storm chasing unless you are a professional meteorologist. So that's why I'm not out there. I also get a lot more equipment here too than I could get in my car. So here we go. Let's move it back just a little bit. Yeah, well, we're actually going to be looking at this real quickly. Notice how the hail core itself is staying just a little bit to, well, it's not even the hail core. Notice that hook just right here. Beautiful, almost a perfect little whoop. That's what we were seeing in terms of the actual storm itself. Now look at it. Not as significant, which means the storm itself is beginning to weaken. But now, well, I say the storm is beginning to weaken. Look what happened just right next to it. Another tornado warning. All right, new tornado warning now. Same region, same kind of area. All right, where is this one? We got a new tornado warning now until 6:15, part of the same storm. This one, not as obvious, no significant. You are seeing a bit of that hail core near 385. Yeah, right about there, 385. We're getting that hail core, maybe about 2-inch sized hail with that. So, all right, that new tornado warning till about 6:15. Let's see the latest reading on that. All part of the same cell itself. Let's see, tornado, tennis ball sized hail, radar indicated rotation. So actually, let's pull up the velocity on that and have it paused. Yeah, we have two kind of different areas of rotation now. We're actually looking at one of these being a very inward force. That's going to be that hook echo here. You can see very bright green. It means a lot of wind is moving right up into the radar, moving directly to the north. So that's going to be what's fueling the entire storm itself, creating that rotating motion. It spins as it heads up into the storm. That's the first warning. The second one is more of the outward force. Behind the hail itself, it is pushing that air down into the area, and we're starting to see that tornado warning there. In fact, until looks like 6:15. So, latest reading with that, still not seeing a whole lot, especially with that second tornado. That second tornado, it's dead in the middle of that storm. It's going to be hail. There's a hail core nearby. It's going to be rain wrapped. It's going to be hard to see. Not the best kind of situation. So let's go ahead and go full screen with the graphics. I will go ahead and pop up with the latest on the radar for you while I look up some extra information on the latest reading of this. I'm going to pause this and leave it there because we still have those two tornado warnings now with the storm in Fort Stockton. We also have two severe thunderstorm warnings associated with it. They're likely to move it farther to the southeast just a bit more as this entire thing develops, but we're also looking at one severe warned storm just to the west of Penwell, kind of on the border of basically Ector County. It's moving up toward about Highway 302, but there's no nearby city, so luckily the impacts for this one are going to be on a much lower scale. But let's see the areas of impact and what we can see from the latest from the National Weather Service. Let me go ahead and read this to you guys real quick. So we are looking at, with that second tornado warning just near Fort Stockton, it's going to include areas like Bakersfield, Texas until 6:15. That's going to be zoomed in a little bit more. Actually, let me see if I can zoom that in, see if I can see Bakersfield pop up. It should be about right here. There it is, Bakersfield. Luckily, you guys are not, you're near the edge, but it's still going to be an area of impact and an area of focus. We're looking about 123 people affected in that area. No schools and no hospitals, so that's certainly some good news. But we now have those two active tornado warnings. One of them is going to be, of course, for just to the south of Fort Stockton and just to the west of Bakersfield. We are also, I know our engineers and IT team is not going to like this, that severe thunderstorm warning just near Monahans and near Ector County, it's heading to no trees. That's where our transmitter is. They're not going to like me today, that's for sure. Population of about 64, quarter-sized hail, 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Biggest threat with a lot of this stuff is going to be that wind and that hail. But considering it's also covering a rather small amount of area compared to what we cover, a lot of this activity is going to be very isolated. When I say 30% chance of rain, this is what I mean. I mean, maybe 30% at most of our region is going to see some activity. We're seeing a lot of activity popping up near Fort Stockton, heading out toward Ira and just to the north of Monaghan. But beyond that, not a whole lot going on. All right. Let me go ahead and jump into my severe weather segment down here. I want to break down a couple of things for you guys just to make it a little bit easier for you to understand kind of where we're going along the lines of activity across much of the basin. All right, here, I'm actually going to go ahead and jump on over to the green screen. So if you guys want to go ahead and pull me up over there, I want to show you guys a little bit of a difference between the watches and the warnings. So we have a couple of interesting things going on. We got first off the severe thunderstorm watch. Now, what does that exactly mean? That means be prepared. Severe thunderstorm is possible and it's near your area, or it's likely to form near your area. The warning is going to mean take action. Severe weather has been spotted. You want to make sure that you are ready to go, ready to hunker down in case anything goes on. Here's a couple of those safe places. Safe versus not safe, especially when it comes to tornadoes. We do have 2 active tornado warnings in Fort Stockton. You want to go to the center part of your house. Possibly maybe a bathroom. That's going to be a good way to go. Away from windows too. Typically bathrooms don't have windows, so ideally that's going to be a better place to be. And of course, cover your head with a helmet, blanket, or pillows. Protect your head. That's why I said, you know, make sure like your hands on the back of your head. Like you're getting a pat down at the TSA. Not the most pleasant, but hey, it's going to protect you. It's going to make sure that you are staying safe. Here's why we're under that tornado threat and that hail and the wind threat. We're under that level 2 slight risk for that severe weather. A lot of that stuff is going to affect basically well, almost all of our area, with the exception of southeastern New Mexico. They're likely to avoid a lot of that activity. That's going to stay in effect until later tonight, until we really get away from that threat. But what does this mean? The SPC outlooks, I always talk about level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 risk. Well, here's the thing. Typically level 4, level 5, we don't get those out here. We're not an area that's prone to a lot of severe weather. What that level 2 risk means, we could see about 1 to 2 isolated tornadoes. Yeah, we have 2 tornado warnings right now. We could see wind gusts over 60 miles an hour. Actually, with that storm itself, we're looking at those wind gusts at 70 miles an hour. And we could see hail up to about 2 inches in diameter. We're looking at hail about 2 inches in diameter. But here's the good news. A lot of this is going to be short-lived. It's not going to last too long. It's not going to be very widespread. Isolated, intense storms are possible. Great example, where Fort Stockton is. That's where a lot of our activity is going to be located. But what does this mean as we head into tomorrow? Do you really want to have to deal with this again? Well, you might have to, because we had that level 2 risk in effect for your Wednesday as well. That's going to happen really into the later parts of tomorrow evening as well. It's all from the same system. Remember the cold front that hit us on Saturday? Brought some severe storms along Fort Stockton up to Big Lake? Yeah, well, that front passed through. Great. We had a nice cool Easter. Yesterday started to warm up a bit. No, it came back around as a warm front. It's pulling up a lot of moisture from the Gulf, increasing our temperatures and increasing intensity within these storms. We do have that wind, that hail, and that tornado risk all in effect for tomorrow as well. Granted, the tornado risk is rather small, but here we go. Small tornado threat, and we have 2 tornado warned storms. All right, but by Thursday, yeah, still that level 1 marginal risk. Now, typically a marginal risk, you're not going to see any kind of tornadic activity, but you can certainly see that wind and that hail threat. So a lot of this stuff, yeah, we could see some significant activity, isolated severe storms. Actually, that timing on there is not all correct, but of course, we're here to keep you updated, keep you informed with everything that you need to see in terms of a lot of active weather. Of course, here's what we're going to be keeping an eye on in terms of activity. No, we probably don't want to learn about hail right now. We want to make sure we're covering that active tornado warning. Here we go, live look in downtown Midland. Wow, it's getting darker and darker. It looks like rain is starting to move a little bit closer into the region, a little bit too close for comfort. I'm also looking along basically Highway 285. Looks like a couple of people are pulled over on the side of the road. A couple people are driving around there. Those better be storm chasers. Yeah, it looks like they're pulling off to the side of the road. That's certainly good news. I don't want to see a lot of you guys out on the road when it's not necessary for those kind of situations. So here we go. A lot of activity popping in along I-10 corridor and Fort Stockton. Let's make it a little bit easier for you guys to read here. Pause it as well. Not seeing a whole lot of that hook echo anymore on the first tornado warning storm. That one's in effect until 6 o'clock. All right, it's not looking that bad at all. 6 o'clock, about 19 minutes. We can do that. We can wait. Looking good so far. That hail core, still significant, right along 285. Not all that bad. I mean, it's bad, but it was a lot worse. So if I say it's not bad, it meant it was worse. I'm trying to lighten up the situation. This is serious. We're keeping an eye on it. We're also looking at that second tornado warning storm in effect until 6:15, kind of moving a little bit closer toward Bakersfield. They are right now seeing a little bit of that moderate rainfall because they're just to the north of Interstate 10, right along, looks like, County Highway 1901. Bakersfield looks like frontage road, and they're starting to see a bit of that moderate-sized hail. Let's move up north a little bit more because there was that one storm trying to move its way into no trees. Yep, we're having this one storm move up into no trees. Sorry, engineers, you guys aren't going to like me. But yeah, we're looking at about 60 mile per hour wind gusts with that hail, about a quarter, the size of a quarter in diameter, which means about 1 inch. So that is just the very baseline for, hey, the storm is going to be severe. So luckily along Odessa, Midland, not seeing a whole lot, but let me actually move it back to what it was with that cloud cover. Pause it real quick, and oh, it's taking a little bit to load. Here we go. Look at right now, lots and lots of cloud cover. Looking pretty dark. We could start to see a little bit of that development as well as it pushes into the northern parts of the Interstate 20 corridor. A lot of this activity is going to be forming along the dry line. Now the dry line itself, it's actually right about here. That's where we see that separation between the moisture out to the east and the dry air out to the west. Those winds are going to combine, and when the winds, one wind is heading this way, the other wind's heading that way, they hit, and there's no place to go. They can't hit the ground, so they just start moving right on up. And when it moves up, that's when we see a lot more of that activity. We start to see the air rising. We start to see a bit of those anvil tops, and we're seeing a lot of this cloud cover. Now, funny enough, a lot of the cloud cover we're seeing is extending all the way to San Angelo, but there's not anything in terms of storms in that area. We're just seeing a lot of that cloud cover. It's because the storms themselves are hitting the point of the atmosphere where cloud cover can't form anymore. What do you do in that case? You can only go east or west, and because all the moisture is out to the east, it is moving out to the east. So you might see something that looks very menacing nearby, but it's not actually going to be those storms. That's why everything today is very isolated in nature. But let's kind of see if we can track this stuff a little bit more. I want to see exactly how quickly some of these storms are moving in terms of direction or even wind speed itself, because a lot of these storms, that's the biggest problem around Fort Stockton, is that Stockton Plateau. These storms kind of just form up and they sit over top of a region for an extended length of time. When that happens, what do? Well, you can't really do much. You have to wait for these storms to kind of rain themselves out. And that's the biggest thing. It's kind of a waiting game. You got to wait for all the energy in these storms to finally dissipate. And once they do, we start to see them fall apart and get less and less severe before it just kind of fizzles out. That's the biggest problem, which also leads to a lot of that localized flash flooding too, because you're going to get a lot of heavy rain over a certain area for a long amount of time. All right, Here's the latest from the National Weather Service. Emergency management out of Pecos County. 18-wheeler has flipped over due to the winds 10 miles south of Fort Stockton on Highway 285. So this is going to be winds themselves from either the storm or even the nearby tornado threat flipping over these 18-wheelers. We are already seeing the storms themselves getting up to about 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And yeah, 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts, that's certainly going to cause any kind of 18-wheelers to flip over. Latest information, I'm not seeing any tornadoes on the ground from our chasers. I'm keeping an eye on it just to see if we could see anything. But hey, actually looking pretty good right now. I certainly can't complain a whole lot because, hey, the best part about this, a lot of this is going to be very rural areas. I'm going to stay on the air because it's still affecting a number of people, but I'm looking at less than 200 people impacted in total from these tornado warnings. Great. That is going to be the best case scenario. I don't want tornadoes to form anywhere, but if they are, I'd rather be in very rural areas. But of course, because it's very rural, we're not going to get the best kind of information. We're not going to get the best videos or pictures. Please, if you guys are actually seeing any kind of activity once the storm is gone, talking mainly about like hail, flooding, anything like that, come and send us those pictures. You can send it to me on my Facebook page. You can also send it to our news station as well. You can also submit it through the Near Me function if you have the News West 9 app. Yeah, that's actually a good way to actually send us a lot of that information. You can actually tag your location. Let us know where you are, what city you're closest to. We want to feature that stuff because we're still looking at a very active afternoon. Now, most of this stuff ideally should fizzle out within the next couple of hours. But it's West Texas, guys. We all know some of these storms can linger around just a little bit longer than most of us ideally would like. Latest information, not seeing a whole lot of information, but we are going to see tornado warning moving toward I-10. That's going to be that first one, or that second storm, around 385. Not a whole lot more information on here. Velocity, latest reading on the velocity, still getting not the best kind of data. Our radar is kind of near the edge of where it's going to get that information. Still seeing a little bit more farther and farther down toward about 285. You're getting a lot of that rotation. That's going to be that bright green that you see just north of that 285 logo right there. That's likely where that tornado is going to be. Hey, look, there we go. Text us your weather pictures. You can text us at 432-567-9991. We will also happily take any kind of videos you guys got as well. We're going to keep you on the air until this warning goes away. So it means you got to listen to me babble on for the next 30 minutes. Oh, well. Here to keep everyone safe. Safe and sound is what we're all about here at News West 9. Luckily, not seeing any super strong rotation. Most promising rotation is going to be the area that I circled right there on your screen. But beyond that, it's getting a lot better. So instead of constantly showing you the same radar loop over and over and over again, I can go ahead and get down to the nitty-gritty of our forecast itself, kind of what I was originally talking about during the 5 o'clock show. But I'm going to go ahead and jump back over to the green screen if you want to go ahead and pull that up just to show you guys, hey, we are still covering areas with that tornado warning, but I also want to get you an idea because we're not looking at just today as the risk for severe storms. We're looking at tomorrow as well and potentially even Thursday. Yeah, probably not what you want to hear, but here's where we're at. We have that severe risk throughout the rest of this evening, level 2 slight. It means we're looking at wind threat, we're looking at hail threat, we're also looking at that small tornado threat. And this level 2 risk extends all the way out. Storm Prediction Center went ahead and extended it farther out to the east, San Angelo and Abilene. Overnight tonight, not too bad. A lot of this stuff is going to be moving out of our region. We don't need to worry about it anymore. 62 degrees, partly cloudy skies. You still have a bit of that flow coming in from the Gulf. Southeast winds 15 to 20 miles an hour and a 10% chance of any of those leftover storms. Most of the stuff is going to be well gone by then. Heading out the door tomorrow morning, you're going to notice it's going to be a bit humid. A little muggy. kind of like what we were seeing today. It means there's a lot more moisture in the atmosphere. Everything is ripe to see those strong to severe pop-up showers and storms. Similar case for tomorrow afternoon, right during that evening commute. I know it's not the most ideal situation, but we're going to have to be dealing with a couple of those pop-up storms. But that's the key word, pop-up. They're going to pop up. They're going to be very quick. We're not going to have a very specified location, but I'll be sure to try to break down where a lot of this stuff is going to be. Most of the stuff is going to be gone based on the model data by around 11 o'clock tonight. Good. Great. We're starting off tomorrow morning. Lots of heavy cloud cover, lots of heavy moisture in the atmosphere, higher humidity levels. Maybe you don't need to put on as much lotion tomorrow morning, so that's certainly some good news, but you might need to put an extra hairspray or gel in the hair because of it. Here we go. Starting off tomorrow afternoon, right around 4 to 5 o'clock. That's pretty early or pretty later in the day compared to our activity popping up around 3 or so, but it's that same area of Stockton Plateau. Starting to see a couple of those little cells popping up. It's kind of still lingering over the place, maybe extending as far eastward as Ira Ann, but then dies out right then and there. Maybe one little cell trying to push its way up toward La Mesa, maybe Snyder, but that's it. So tomorrow doesn't seem to be as pronounced, doesn't seem to be a very large-sized area, but it is going to be popping up in the same exact spots, right around Fort Stockton. Then we go into Thursday. Thursday, there is a lower end severe risk for the region. That's where we're keeping an eye on this stuff all the way out toward Dryden. Again, right around Fort Stockton, that's where a majority of our storms really begin to pop up across the region. And then it moves all the way down south, possibly towards Sanderson, and then out into Mexico, where we don't need to worry about it anymore. But this one looks to be kind of taking place a little bit later in the day. Here's that severe risk for tomorrow. We are still going to be under that level 2 slight risk. I'm still looking at both wind, hail, and tornado threats all in play. Now, the wind and the hail threat are going to be much more significant than that tornado threat. So if you do see storms, wind and hail, that's going to be what you're likely to see. Even into Thursday, you got that level 1 marginal risk, going to be likely wind and hail, but with a marginal risk, you typically don't get any kind of severe warnings with it. So here's what you need to know for tomorrow. From around 2 p.m. to about 9 p.m., that's what we're looking at. Unlike today, which was mainly from about noon to about 6 to 7 o'clock. Hail, strong gusts, isolated tornadoes. Watch out for that localized flooding too. We're going to see lots of that large-sized hail. It could break your windshield, but also that flooding too. You want to be able to just avoid driving if absolutely necessary and if you can. Next 9 days, things start to get a little bit interesting. We still have the alert day for tomorrow because of that tornado potential, and even for Thursday, still about 30% chance of those storms, but I'm not going an alert day just yet, because it's still too early to tell if we're looking at any significant threats. Then we head into the weekend. Temperatures staying relatively mild. Not a whole lot going on, but hey, we're back with those 90s as early as Monday. Well, let me go ahead and jump back over to my desk, get you a latest reading on those tornadoes, because we're still looking at a little bit of that activity across much of the Permian Basin, the Trans-Pecos. All right, here we go. Latest look at that Midland sky camera. Notice a little bit of that break in the clouds, right where the sponsor logo is. That is where we're seeing, what we call mammatus clouds. That is actually typically a sign of some large-sized hail. It's also a sign of seeing some significant sized hail associated with it, and even that tornadic potential too. So we're keeping an eye on a lot of that stuff because a lot of activity is beginning to brew and pop up across the region. Let's move that radar back up, because it looks like National Weather Service went ahead and let that actual severe thunderstorm warning associated with these expire. So that is certainly some good news. It means that the hail core for the storms itself is beginning to fall apart. I'm also seeing less noticeable hook echoes kind of taking place here as well. We still have that first warning along 285 where that initial hook echo is, where that small hail core is. That's in effect until 6 o'clock tonight. What we also saw is 2 individual cells. You got 2 little parts of this cell. Let me go ahead and pause it. All right. You see that break of those 2 cells. One is along 285. The other one is kind of on the northern edge of Interstate 10. much of these just not moving. They're not moving all that fast. That's where we could see that localized flash flooding, and of course a lot of that little bit of ideas lost along the I-10 corridor. Still 2 active tornado warnings until about 6. One is until 6 o'clock. The other is until 6:15. Not seeing a whole lot of new information from the National Weather Service. Still, emergency management has mentioned about the 18-wheeler flipping over due to those strong winds 10 miles south of Fort Stockton on Highway 285. So we're looking at some large-scale impacts across the region. Of course, and we're going to continue to see that threat continue into the later part of tonight. I'm just waiting for these tornado warnings themselves to expire before we start to really get back into our regular programming. Of course, I know you probably don't like hearing my voice for about an hour or so. Do you think I like talking for an hour straight? Probably not so much. But we're here to keep you safe. We're here to keep you informed. And until these tornado warnings go away, I'm not going away. All right, latest from some of the storm chasers, a lot of these storms are likely rain wrapped. We're not seeing a whole lot of these tornadoes on the ground. It's very hard to see, very difficult to pinpoint exact locations, and that's the hardest part when it comes to a lot of this information. We're looking at rain anywhere from ½ an inch to about an inch per hour. So good news, we're not seeing extreme heavy rainfall, although we did get reports of about 2 inches of water on the roadways in Fort Stockton. That was from Pecos County Emergency Management. So we are seeing some localized flooding on the roadways. Now, 2 inches is not going to cause any significant problems in terms of drivability or activity on the roadways. As a matter of fact, that is going to, maybe cause a minor inconvenience, maybe splash someone else on the sidewalk. Don't do that. Don't do that. Unless they're asking for it. You've seen those guys online. They're like, hey, splash me, splash me. Go ahead and do that. Don't be out on the road in the first place in this, okay? There's tornadoes, so guys. Make sure you're staying safe out there. Latest reading with information from the Hail Corps. Let's see what I got in terms of that. In the Hail Corps itself, okay, that is certainly not right. It tells me about 1 foot an hour in terms of rainfall. That's not right. That's a interesting concept if that's actually the case. Whoo boy. All right, they did just issue a new severe thunderstorm warning. With this storm, we're still looking at about 2-inch sized hail being seen on radar. Let me go ahead and move it over a little bit more so you can see it nice and clearly on the box. Heading along 285, this is going to be for very rural areas of Pecos County, and that's going to be the best part about it. We're not seeing a whole lot of localized impacts for a number of people. As a matter of fact, we're looking at about, they have yet to push that alert out yet, though. All right, that's good, though. Good stuff. Here we go. Latest 2-inch hail, 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. We already got reports of an 18-wheeler actually flipping off to the side. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Make sure that people and animals outdoors are staying indoors. They will be injured if you are outdoors. Expect hail to damage roof, sidings, windows, and vehicles. Expect considerable tree damage. Wind damage is also likely to mobile homes, roofs, and outbuildings. The severe thunderstorm will remain over mainly rural areas of central Pecos County, but the tornado warning is still in effect. Tornadoes can develop quickly from these severe thunderstorms. If you spot a tornado, go at once into the basement or small central room of a sturdy structure, and for your protection, move into an interior room on the lowest floor of a building. We are looking at considerable, when they say considerable damage, that's when we're talking about 2-inch sized hail, 70-mile-per-hour winds, and that potential for that tornado. A lot of storm chasers are out there watching these storms right now. They're unable to see anything actually on the ground, mainly because of a lot of rain in the area. We're not getting as well of a defined hook echo in the area, but we're still seeing a whole lot of activity. Now that tornado warning is set to expire within less than a minute, but we still have that second tornado warning near Bakersfield, although I'm still just not seeing a ton of significant activity across the area. So that is certainly some good news. We're not seeing a whole lot of localized impacts. We are still seeing that one severe warned storm just to the north along the I-20 corridor. We got one storm on top of no trees. That is a severe warned storm. storm that is in effect until about 6:15, so another 15 more minutes on that. This one is on a much smaller severe chance. We are looking at about quarter-sized hail, about 1 inch in diameter, and we are looking at those wind gusts about 60 miles an hour, which is certainly not as bad. I'm also watching this one storm trying to pop up over Wink and Kermit, moving to the north. So these storms are moving in all different directions too. It's certainly fascinating to see. We do have that one storm right around just to the south of Kermit. Doesn't look like I'm seeing any significant lightning or hail core with that, so that's certainly some good news. But you can see those really strong wind gusts across the region. Latest reading, looks like they went ahead and let that tornado warning expire, but we still have that second one just to the east of Fort Stockton, near the small town of Bakersfield. If I zoom in, here's Bakersfield. Still not seeing a whole lot in terms of rotation, which is good news. We're going to be keeping an eye on that, but we're also looking at potential for maybe a little bit of activity on velocity. So let's go ahead and pull up that velocity. Still not seeing any strong rotation. Actually, more of that rotation is going to be along the lines of 285. That's going to be that's the area where we did have that last severe warning, but even this tornado warning, it's kind of highlighting this area here. And while you have the reds and the greens together, that is going to really amplify that, hey, we're looking at, some kind of rotation. It needs to be very bright red, bright green. That's showing that, hey, you have winds moving to the radar and you have winds moving away from the radar, but they need to be very fast, because if you have one going towards, the other going away, you end up getting rotation. It's kind of the whole, hey, we're using a radar, it's measuring 3 dimensions in 2 dimensions. Gets a little bit complicated as we kind of go into the region. All right, latest on the hail core. Ooh, we are looking at some really large-sized hail popping in across the area. Let's go ahead and hit the now, because it looks like that the hail core itself is actually weakening. So that is certainly some good news. Not seeing real strong hail, still looking at about maybe 1.5 inches or so sized hail being picked up on radar. Now, of course, that's just what the radar itself. But let's also look at maybe even precipitation type. No. I'm pulling up the wrong radar. Excuse me just a second. Here we go. Still going to be very heavy rain. Let's actually go ahead and go back and see about all that lightning near the area. When you start to see a lot of lightning, that's where you could see maybe that potential for the tornadic development. Looks like a lot of that lightning is beginning to calm down now too. That's good, because remember, the whirlwind thunder roars go indoors. You might not be actually seeing any kind of rain, but if you're out near Ira Ann, you got a lot of lightning nearby. If you're out near Rankin and Big Lake, we're starting to see another small little cell develop out there. We're still looking at that heavier hail potential, not necessarily hail potential, but that lightning potential. And if I zoom out, let's see if there's any activity moving out toward Odessa, Midland, Big Spring. A lot of you guys have been asking questions about that. I certainly don't mind answering them, especially when we have kind of unpredictable weather like this. A lot of the models, though, were showing, hey, this stuff is going to be popping up around Fort Stockton. Right now in Wink and Kermit, I'm getting about 2 lightning strikes. I'm looking at some heavier sized rain falling down into the area. I can go ahead and actually pop it up. How much rain are we seeing? We are looking about 4 inches per hour within that storm, just to the east of Wink and just to the south of Kermit. So heavy rainfall in those areas. We're also looking at the same severe thunderstorm warning, about 4 inches now just south of Goldsmith. So expect some very heavy rain quite soon as this entire system pushes through. The good news is, hey, you're going to have to hear me talk for about 12 more minutes. 12 more minutes. And then I'll stop, okay? I'll pass it back off. Here we go. Still not seeing a whole lot of activity outside of Fort Stockton. So this is going to be best case scenario. We're going to be keeping an eye on a lot of this stuff moving into the region. You don't have to worry too much, but we are looking at mainly a lot of this activity staying in the very rural parts of Pecos County. Still not seeing a ton of information in terms of, hey, we're looking at a whole lot of active weather going across the area. But of course, we are keeping an eye on this entire system, because we're not looking at this just stopping after tonight. Once it does stop tonight, it's going to stop for those overnight hours, but we will start to see those chances for thunderstorms going into Wednesday as well as Thursday. So of course, I'm going to pass it off to Crystal Cruz. She has some information on what to do in a tornado to make sure that you guys are staying safe. Crystal?
Well, Jordan, you know, it is that time of year where we're starting to see this severe weather. If you're getting alerts of a tornado warning and you're not sure what to do, we have the answers for you. If you're near a building, you need to take shelter in that building or underground. But if you're in your car, you should park it off to the side of the road and stay in your car with your seatbelt on. You should also head down below the windows and cover your head with blankets or a coat. But if you are outside and unable to get to shelter, you need to get away from trees and cars, then lie flat with face down, low on the ground to protect the back of your head with your arms. Let's go ahead and take some look at some video we have from meteorologist Andy Mead, if we can bring that up. It was around the city of Crane earlier today. Look at those clouds. You can see pretty scary right there. This is around 4 this afternoon. The clouds were forming. Of course, there were reports of a wall of dust in the area. If you have any weather pictures, whether it's photos of storms or damage left behind or anything that looks like it's headed your way, be sure to text them to us at 567-9991. Now, Jordan, let's go back to you. We have a couple of more minutes for that tornado warning.
Yeah, that's right, Crystal. That tornado warning is still in effect for another 9 more minutes, so we're going to be keeping an eye on it. We're still looking at the hail core along this 285 storm really beginning to come together back once again. Not necessarily the hook echo. We're not looking at that tornadic threat, but we're still looking at about 2-inch sized hail associated with that. That's going to be about the size of a tennis ball or bigger. And I mean, it kind of hurts if you get hit with a tennis ball. Imagine if that tennis ball was made of ice. Yikes. That's going to cause a lot of damage. That's why we always say make sure that you are staying indoors and away from windows. These storms are having wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour. So you have tennis ball sized ice moving at 70 miles an hour. That's going to break some windows. So make sure you are staying in an interior room away from windows and you are staying safe. If you're not entirely sure where is going to be the best safe place to be, I have this for you. A couple of safe places. We can go ahead and take that full screen where we're looking at, hey, where do you want to go? Go to the center part of your house. Go away from windows and potentially cover your head with a helmet, blanket, or pillows. We are also looking at that same severe risk going into tomorrow as well as Thursday. And we're looking at mainly wind and hail being the biggest threats with a lot of that. Make sure that you are staying away from windows, even something like a bathroom, maybe a closet. You know, there's not going to be windows in your bathroom or closet. Those are going to be moving around the areas. And of course, we're going to continue to watch a lot of this stuff as the entire system pushes through. We're still looking at those strong wind gusts, even outside of where the tornadic activity is, at about 30 miles an hour in Midland, 36 in Dryden. Notice the direction of those winds. They're coming in from the southeast. That's pulling up plenty of moisture into the region. We're going to continue to watch that entire storm system as it moves through. But let's actually go ahead and check out the watches and warnings across the area. Everyone in the pink is going to be under a severe thunderstorm watch. That means if you see a thunderstorm in the area, it can likely go severe. And then, of course, that one red box just outside of Fort Stockton near Bakersfield, that's going to be that tornado warning still in effect for a couple more minutes. Latest information, National Weather Service has not issued anything new about it. I haven't heard anything new from Pecos County Emergency Management too, other than the 18-wheeler that flipped over on 285, 10 miles south of Fort Stockton as a result of those really strong winds associated with the thunderstorm and the nearby tornado. It also looks like we might even have another severe warning storm. Yeah, it's going to be an active evening, guys. We do have one. It's actually out near New Mexico. Yep, it's going to be that same storm I was watching moving into Kermit. We got that one severe warning storm on top of Kermit right now. We're looking at about 4 inches of rain per hour in that red area. So let's go ahead and pause that. See what I'm looking at in terms of activity. Severe thunderstorm warning. They're talking about ping-pong sized hail and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Now, ping-pong sized hail is about 1.5 inches in diameter. Now, ping-pongs, you know, they're a lot easier to deal with when they're not made of ice. I prefer the ping pong the other way. Radar indicated, and it's going to be about 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So we're seeing those storms really popping up just to the west of Odessa. So certainly some of those stronger storms. Let me go ahead and actually pull up our Skycam. Why am I having trouble? Here we go. Skycam outlook right now, still looking at kind of those menacing clouds on the northern end, or looks like on the on the top end of your screen, but we're still seeing a pretty decent break. You see a bit of that yellow in the atmosphere, not bad at all. Let me see the latest from our Clandesta camera. This is looking just to the south, still seeing some of those very dark looking menacing clouds across our area. Here's a look over much of the Midland International Airport. You can actually see a bit of that break in the clouds. Wow. That's fascinating. We're starting to see those winds picking up a little bit more, starting to shake the camera ever so slightly, versus a live look over Odessa. Wow, that is actually stunning when you come to think about it. Severe thunderstorms, tornado warnings, everything in between actually makes the sky just that much more vibrant. Unfortunately, the vibrance is brought to you by a lot of destruction and a lot of very strong storms and activity. Big Spring right now, actually still seeing a little bit of those dark clouds, because as we kind of look a little bit farther and farther to the west, that's where we're seeing a lot of that activity really beginning to pop up. It looks like we now just got an update, latest new severe thunderstorm warning for Goldsmith and no trees until 7:15. That was going to be that one storm that was set to expire at about 6:15. It has since been allowed to go back in, but let's look at the ground level. Ground level in Odessa. Ooh, yeah, certainly seeing some of those very dark, low-lying clouds. But when you take into account, you see more low-lying clouds, you get that higher humidity value too. We're looking at humidity about 47%. That's not as bad. That's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Once we get closer to that 70, 80, 90% humidity, that's when you can start to see more of that rain fall down to the ground and be a little bit more on the localized side. All right, here is the last look at that radar. We're going to keep our eye on it until this tornado warning goes away. Notice how much lightning is around that entire storm, and specifically along the one on 285. This tornado warning still in effect until 6:15. I know you're probably tired of hearing my voice. I'm hearing it too. It's okay. It's okay. I want to make sure everyone's safe out there. We're still looking at areas of impact, still at about less than 200 people affected by this area. So that's certainly some good news. Still tornado warn for about 3 more minutes. Let's go ahead and see any information. So we got the severe thunderstorm warning in Pecos. We are still looking at lots of that hail across the area. Let me go ahead and pull up the latest reading from velocity, see if we're seeing anything in terms of more and more rotation. Excuse the flashing real quick. Yeah, still not seeing a lot of very high chance of rotation. I'm looking at a couple of storm chasers, professional storm chasers out near Fort Stockton. They're not seeing a whole lot. It looks like a lot of big developments in terms of just looking at that kind of like wall cloud, what we like to call that a nice anvil top. Let me actually do that big zoom out here. You can see where a lot of these storms have kind of popped up and have brought heavy, heavy cloud cover across much of the area. We're still seeing most of these storms continuing to push farther and farther out to the east. So that is certainly some good news. Looks like North Odessa is starting to actually see that storm right on top of Goldsmith. We're looking at about ping pong sized hail associated with that and about 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. A little bit of lightning locally. Make sure that you guys are taking cover. Remember the rule, when thunder roars, go indoors. We're going to be keeping an eye on that. A couple of those severe warnings across the area. Most of the activity now is actually pushing out toward Big Lake. Notice Big Lake and Rankin. Heavy, heavy lightning, but not a lot in terms of a hail core. If I actually go back to not show you the clouds or the lightning, it just looks like, hey, maybe some isolated pop-up showers. Literally the definition of a pop-up shower. Not very well organized, not looking at strong winds. We're just keeping an eye on that area. Big Lake, you guys got a lot of rain on Saturday. I don't think you need any more. I mean, unless you really, really want some, because we are not the kind of area that deals with rain very well. We tend to get a lot of, unfortunately, localized flash flooding. Tornado warning. All right, we're doing the countdown now until 6:15. It is 6:14. We're making sure that it goes away, and then I will toss it back to regular programming, and we can get back on with your local news and stories. I see our reporters are eager to tell your stories about everything going on. We're watching that storm. It is 6:15. Well, my computer says 6:14. Yours says 6:15. Let's make sure this goes away. I want to make sure that you guys are staying protected. You are staying safe. And there we go. The tornado warning is done. We will be right back with the latest on local news, weather, and sports coming back after this break.